That animal is not angry, Jack Mercer said, staring through the cracked safety glass. It is begging you to stop. No one in the Asterian Academy arena answered him. 6 hours later, they would all remember those words. Right now, Jack was flat on the cold metal floor, one hand pressed against his ribs, while a black claw rested less than 6 inches from his face. The Carvax stood over him, nearly 10 feet tall at the shoulder, its armored hide rising and falling with each heavy breath. Behind the emergency barrier, hundreds of alien students shouted for Jack to run. Professor Valor Thane slammed both hands against the control panel. Mercer, get up. The west gate is open. Jack heard him. He also heard Cassian Rook yelling something about human stupidity, and Lyra Vin calling his name with a fear that cut through every other voice. But Jack did not move. The beast was not looking at his throat. It was looking past him, toward a narrow maintenance wall beneath the north stands. Then the sound came again. Soft, broken, almost too faint to hear beneath the alarms. A high, trembling cry from somewhere behind the wall. The Carvax's entire body tightened. Jack saw the change immediately. Its front claws dug into the floor. Its head lowered. Not to strike. To shield. They took something from you, Jack whispered. The creature's breath rolled across his face, warm and sharp with the sterile chemicals of the Academy lab. Jack's hands were shaking. He could feel the tremor all the way into his shoulders, and he hated that everyone could probably see it. He had spent years pretending fear made him weak. Standing there, beneath an animal strong enough to tear through reinforced steel, he finally understood the truth. Fear was not the problem. Ignoring it was. Easy, he said. I am not the one you want. Behind the barrier, Valor turned to the security officers. Prepare the suppression gas. Jack looked toward the ceiling vents. Do not, he said. Valor stared at him. You are in no position to give orders. Then listen as a professor. Jack kept his eyes low, never challenging the Carvax directly. It has had 3 chances to attack me. It has not taken one. Cassian pushed forward through the crowd, his polished academy uniform still spotless. It is playing with you, Mercer. Predators do that. Jack glanced toward him. Do they teach that in books? Or did your father buy you that answer too? A few students went silent. Cassian's face hardened. Lyra stepped closer to the glass. Her pale blue skin had gone almost gray. Jack, what do you see? He listened to the cry behind the wall again. A mother. Valor's expression changed for half a second. It was enough. Jack caught it. The hesitation. The guilt. The Carvax lowered its head until one dark eye met his. Jack slowly placed his palm against the floor between them. Not touching. Not claiming. Just waiting. I know, he said quietly. They took something from you. The beast stopped growling. The entire arena fell silent. 6 hours earlier, Professor Valor had stood before the class, smiled at the creature behind the glass, and asked one simple question. Who among you would face the beast? No one moved. Then Jack Mercer stepped forward. 6 hours earlier, Jack Mercer sat alone at the end of a cafeteria table, stirring powdered creamer into coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. Across the room, Cassian Rook was entertaining a circle of cadets with another story about how humans had survived by accident rather than ability. Soft skin, weak eyesight, no natural armor, Cassian said, raising his voice just enough for Jack to hear. Yet somehow they call their planet a death world. Laughter followed. Jack took one slow sip and looked out through the tall windows at Asterian's silver towers. He had been at the academy for 3 months, and he had learned that arguing with Cassian only gave him a larger audience. Lyra Vin slid into the seat across from him, placing a blue hand over the untouched food on her tray. You know, silence makes him think he is winning. Jack shrugged. Talking makes him think I care. Lyra tried not to smile. She was tall even by human standards, with pale blue skin and bright amber eyes that noticed more than she admitted. Unlike most students, she never treated Jack like an exhibit from a primitive world. Professor Thane moved today's class, she said. Restricted research wing. Jack stopped stirring his coffee. That sounds safe. It is a predator response examination. That sounds less safe. Lyra leaned closer. Cassian says Thane brought something back from Vorga. Jack had read about Vorga. Crushing gravity, violent weather, and animals built to survive both. The kind of place academy textbooks described with respectful language from a safe distance. Before he could answer, Cassian appeared beside their table. Mercer, I hope you brought clean clothes. The class may finally see a human run at full speed. Jack looked up at him. Cashin's dark uniform was perfectly fitted, every medal placed exactly where people would notice it. You seem excited, Jack said. I enjoy scientific discovery. You enjoy crowds. Cashin's smile tightened. A warning chime sounded through the cafeteria, directing the biology class toward the lower research levels. Jack stood, threw away his coffee, and followed Lyra into the corridor. The deeper they went, the colder the academy became. Bright classrooms gave way to heavy doors, security checkpoints, and walls without windows. Jack noticed scratches along one transport gate, each mark nearly an inch deep. He stopped. Lyra. She followed his gaze. Those are new. Professor Vaylor Thane waited beyond the final door with 20 students gathered around him. He was elegant, controlled, and proud in the way only a man surrounded by admirers could be. Behind him stood a wall of reinforced glass. The chamber beyond looked empty. Today, Vaylor announced, you will learn the difference between studying fear and mastering it. He touched the control panel. The lights inside the chamber came on. Something enormous shifted in the darkness. Several students stepped back. Jack did not. A black shape moved toward the glass, revealing a body almost 10 feet high, 6 powerful limbs, and eyes fixed on every movement outside its enclosure. Cashin recovered first. That is the Black Crown. Vaylor smiled. The only living Carvax ever removed from Vorga. A technician beneath the stands pressed a switch. A faint cry sounded through hidden speakers. The creature struck the glass so hard the floor trembled. Students shouted and stumbled away. Jack watched the technician turn the switch off. The Carvax stopped instantly and stared toward the north wall. Vaylor spread his hands. Who among you would face it? Cashin looked at Jack, waiting for him to refuse. Jack looked at the animal, then at the hidden speaker. Something about the demonstration was wrong. He raised his hand. I will. Professor Vaylor studied Jack for a long moment, as if waiting for him to laugh and take back the offer. Jack did not. The Carvax paced behind the reinforced glass, each step slow and deliberate, its attention fixed on the north wall rather than the students gathered outside. You understand the exercise is voluntary, Vaylor said. I do. And you understand this animal has never accepted close contact with any researcher. Jack glanced at the technician beneath the stands. The young alien kept one hand near the hidden audio controls and avoided his eyes. I understand what you are telling us. Cashin folded his arms. That is not the same as understanding the animal. Jack turned toward him. For once, we agree. A few students exchanged uncertain looks. Vaylor tapped the main console, bringing up a diagram of the arena. A narrow secondary field would separate Jack from the Carvax by 12 feet. According to the display, the creature could approach but not cross the barrier. Jack read the safety notes twice. What happens if the field fails? Vaylor's smile faded by a fraction. It will not. That was not my question. Lyra stepped beside Jack and lowered her voice. You do not have to prove anything to him. I am not doing this for Cashin. Then why are you doing it? Jack looked through the glass. The Carvax had stopped pacing. It stood perfectly still, listening. Because everyone keeps calling it aggressive, but no one is asked what it is reacting to. Vaylor opened the access door. Cold air rolled out of the chamber, carrying the sharp smell of disinfectant and something earthy beneath it. Jack removed his academy jacket and handed it to Lyra. Hold this. Her fingers closed around the fabric. That is your whole plan. No, that is the part of the plan where I do not smell like the cafeteria. Cashin laughed. Brilliant. Humanity has discovered laundry. Jack ignored him and stepped through the first gate. The door sealed behind him with a heavy click. Inside the chamber, every sound felt closer. The hum of the field, the soft scrape of claws on metal, his own breathing. Vaylor's voice came through the overhead speaker. Remain inside the marked circle. Do not make direct eye contact. Do not approach the primary barrier. Jack moved to the center of the circle. The Carvax turned toward him. It was larger up close than it had seemed through the glass, with dark plates overlapping across its shoulders and pale markings along its neck. Jack noticed raw skin beneath a metal collar, then saw one rear leg favoring the ground. It is injured, he said. The restraints are necessary, Vaylor replied. Necessary for what? No one answered. The technician reached for the audio control. Jack saw Cashin lean toward him and whisper something. The technician hesitated, then increased the signal. A thin cry sounded from behind the north wall. The Carvax snapped its head toward it. The floor vibrated as the animal charged the inner field. Blue light flashed between them. Several students cried out, but Jack held his ground. The creature stopped inches from the barrier, not looking at him, but past him. Jack turned toward the hidden speaker. "Play it again." Vaylor's voice sharpened. Mercer remained focused. "I am focused." The cry came a second time. The Carvax pressed one forelimb against the field and released a low sound that was nothing like a hunting call. Lyra moved closer to the observation glass. "Professor, that sounds like a response." Vaylor shut off the audio. "The examination is over." Jack did not move. "No, the demonstration is over." The lights above the arena flickered. Cashin looked down at the console, suddenly confused. A warning tone sounded once, then again. The blue field between Jack and the Carvax thinned until it was barely visible. Jack looked at Vaylor. "You said it would not fail." The field disappeared. The instant the field vanished, the Carvax moved. Jack threw himself sideways as one armored forelimb swept through the place where he had been standing. The impact struck the floor hard enough to send a sharp vibration through the arena. Students stumbled behind the observation glass. Red warning lights flashed overhead. "Emergency containment," Vaylor shouted. "Seal the inner chamber." The access doors began to close, but the Carvax slammed its shoulder into the nearest one before the lock engaged. Metal groaned. The door stopped halfway. Jack rolled behind a low equipment station and came up on one knee. His lungs wanted him to run. The only open route was less than 30 feet away, but reaching it meant crossing directly in front of the animal. "Jack, Westgate," Lyra called through the speaker. "Move now." He looked at the Carvax. It was not following him. It had turned toward the north wall again, striking the floor whenever the hidden cry sounded. "Shut off that recording," Jack said. The technician stared at his controls. "I already did." The cry came again. Softer this time. "Alive." Jack felt the meaning settle over him. It was not a recording. Cashin pushed past the technician and grabbed the manual controls. "Increase the restraint pulse." Vaylor caught his wrist. "Do not touch that. He is trapped in there because your system failed." The system did not fail on its own. Cashin froze. On the arena floor, the collar around the Carvax lit with a harsh white glow. The animal recoiled, then turned toward Jack, confused and desperate. Jack spotted the maintenance relay mounted 6 feet up the wall. If he could cut power to the collar, he might stop the pulse. If he was wrong, he would remove the only restraint left. "Mercer, do not interfere," Vaylor ordered. Jack climbed onto the equipment station. "Then turn it off. We cannot control the animal without it." "You are not controlling it now." The Carvax rushed forward. Jack jumped, caught the edge of the relay housing, and pulled himself up as the station tipped beneath him. The creature passed under his boots and struck the wall, missing him by inches. Jack held on with one hand while reaching for the manual release. The cover would not move. "Come on," he muttered. He drove his heel against the latch. It snapped open. Inside, 3 cables fed power into the collar system. Only one was marked in a language he could read. Cashin's voice came through the speaker. "If you disconnect that, it will kill everyone in the room." Jack looked through the glass. There is only one person in the room. He pulled the cable. The collar went dark. For one long second, nothing happened. Then the Carvax stopped. Its shoulders lowered. The violent tension left its body, replaced by a low, uneven sound that Jack had heard once before from an injured mountain lion caught in a wire fence. Not rage. Pain. Jack dropped to the floor and backed away slowly. Security officers arrived outside the arena carrying suppression rifles. Dean Oryx entered behind them, calm and perfectly dressed despite the alarms. "End this," he said. Vaylor stepped in front of the firing controls. "There is a student inside." Oryx did not look at Jack. "There is evidence inside." Jack heard that. So did Lyra. The Carvax turned toward the north wall and pressed its head against the metal. The faint cry answered from the other side. Jack noticed a mechanical latch near the floor, hidden beneath a removable panel. He crouched beside it. Vaylor's voice dropped. "Mercer, step away from that wall." Jack looked through the glass and saw fear on the professor's face. Not fear of the animal. Fear of what Jack might find. "What is behind here?" he asked. No one answered. Jack wrapped both hands around the latch. Dean Oryx raised one finger toward security. "Stop him." Jack pulled. The wall began to open. The wall opened 3 feet before the emergency lock caught, revealing a narrow chamber washed in dim blue light. Jack expected equipment. Instead, he heard a small, frightened cry. The Carvax lowered its head and pushed toward the opening, but Jack raised one hand. Easy, give me a second. Behind the glass, Dean Oryx stepped closer to the security console. Close that partition. Valor did not move. What is in there? Restricted research material. That was not my question. Jack slipped sideways through the gap. The chamber smelled like disinfectant and damp earth. 3 glass habitats stood against the far wall. 2 were dark. In the third, a small Carvax lay curled beneath a web of sensors, no larger than a farm dog. Its eyes opened when Jack entered. The cry came again, and the mother answered from the arena with a low, trembling sound. Jack's stomach tightened. You used her, baby. Lyra was already working at the observation terminal. Lines of encrypted files rolled across the screen. Professor, these records are sealed under military authorization. Valor looked at Oryx. You told me the specimen was isolated because of disease protocols. I told you what you needed to know. Jack found a release panel beside the habitat, but the controls required an authorization code. The young animal tried to rise, then sank back onto the padded floor. Jack kept his voice steady. Lyra, can you open this? I am trying. Cashin stood beside her, staring at the data. His confidence had vanished. Those are neural conditioning logs. Lyra glanced at him. You recognize them? Cashin swallowed. My father's fleet uses the same pattern for remote drone training. Oryx turned toward security. Remove those students from the console. 2 officers stepped forward. Valor blocked their path. No one moves until I understand what happened in my laboratory. Oryx's expression hardened. Your laboratory exists because I funded it. Then you funded a lie. In the chamber, Jack examined the habitat frame. The electronic lock was secure, but the lower hinge used a mechanical maintenance pin. Human engineers still use those on remote wildlife cages because power failed, software crashed, and animals did not care about warranties. He pulled the pin halfway free. A warning light blinked above the door. Jack, Lyra said over the speaker. The habitat is connected to the main containment system. Opening it will trigger a complete lockdown. How long? 30 seconds. Can you stop it? Not without administrator access. Cashin looked toward Oryx. I can get it. Everyone turned to him. Oryx's voice became dangerously calm. Do not make another mistake today. Cashin flinched, but he moved to the terminal. I already made one. His hands raced across the controls. I increased the signal during the test. I thought I was embarrassing Mercer. I did not know the field had been altered. Lyra stared at him. Altered by whom? Cashin opened the access log. One name appeared at the top. Dean Oryx. The room went silent. Oryx reached for the security override. Valor caught his hand before he touched it. You planned the failure. I planned a demonstration, Oryx replied. A controlled incident would have transferred the program to military authority. The human was never supposed to get close to the wall. Jack looked at the frightened young Carvax, then back toward the mother waiting beyond the gap. That is the trouble with people like you, he said. You keep calling cruelty control. He pulled the maintenance pin free. The habitat opened. Every door in the research wing locked at once. Then a new alarm sounded, deeper than the others. Lyra checked the display, and the color drained from her face. Jack, Oryx just activated the purge system. Valor turned sharply. There is no purge system. Oryx stepped back as steel shutters began descending over the observation glass. There is now. Jack lifted the young Carvax carefully against his chest. On the other side of the opening, its mother rose to her full height. The countdown began at 60 seconds. 60 seconds became 59, and the vents along the ceiling opened with a mechanical hiss. Jack held the young Carvax close as the mother stepped through the narrow gap. Every movement controlled, every dark eye fixed on the small body in his arms. Lyra, tell me what the purge does, Jack said. She scanned the emergency panel while steel shutters sealed the observation room. It floods the chamber with an oxygen-stripping compound. We have less than 1 minute before the air becomes unusable. Cashin pulled at the locked exit. Oryx, shut it down. Dean Oryx stood behind the security officers, calm again now that the evidence was trapped. The system cannot be interrupted once activated. Valor stared at him. You designed it that way. I designed it to protect the Academy from an uncontrolled predator. Jack looked through the narrowing opening. You mean from witnesses? 48 seconds. The mother Carvax moved beside Jack, close enough that its armored shoulder brushed the wall. He could feel the vibration of its breathing. The young one shifted weakly against his chest. There has to be another exit, Jack said. Valor turned toward the north corridor. The specimen delivery tunnel connects to the freight elevator, but the inner gate requires power. Cashin checked the dead console. Oryx cut the local grid. Jack looked up at the emergency lights. Not all of it. Those are still running. Lyra followed his gaze. Independent battery line. Can you redirect it? Not from here. Jack nodded toward the narrow maintenance channel above the habitats. Then we go there. 39 seconds. He placed the young Carvax gently on the floor. The mother immediately curved around it, shielding it with her body. Jack climbed onto the empty habitat frame and reached for the access panel above. It was 12 feet up. Cashin dragged over a portable equipment case without being asked. Use this. Jack stepped onto it and pulled himself into the channel. Lyra followed, then Valor. Cashin looked back at Oryx. Come with us. Oryx gave him a pitying smile. You still think this is an accident you can apologize for? The security officers raised their weapons, blocking Cashin from the tunnel. Oryx pressed a control on his wrist. The purge countdown stopped at 32 seconds. Everyone froze. Jack looked down from the channel. You said it could not be interrupted. Oryx smiled. I said you could not interrupt it. The shutters reopened just enough for the officers to enter the arena. Oryx had never intended to destroy the Carvax. He intended to kill the students, recover the animals, and blame the entire event on Jack. Step away from the specimens, Oryx ordered. The human will be recorded as the cause of the containment failure. The professor will be remembered as a tragic casualty. The rest of you will be unfortunate witnesses. Valor's voice dropped. You will not leave this academy with them. I already own the transport authorization. Oryx gestured, and the officers advanced. Cashin moved between them and the maintenance channel. His hands were empty. You used me. You volunteered. Oryx raised his wrist again. Move. Cashin did not. Jack saw the change in him then. Not courage exactly. More like the moment pride finally ran out of places to hide. Jack, Cashin said without turning around. Get them out. One officer reached for him. Cashin hit the emergency release beside the wall. The freight gate opened 3 feet, then jammed. The mother Carvax moved faster than anyone expected, not toward the officers, but toward the gap. She pushed the young one ahead with her snout. Jack dropped from the channel, lifted the little creature, and ran for the gate. Lyra and Valor followed. Cashin came last as the officers closed in behind him. Oryx shouted a new command. The purge countdown restarted at 30 seconds. Jack slid beneath the half-open gate with the young Carvax in his arms. The mother forced her way through after him. Cashin dove under as the gate began to close. His hand cleared the edge by inches. On the other side, they found the freight elevator dark and unpowered. Lyra looked at Jack. Now what? Before he could answer, every screen in the corridor flickered on. Oryx's face appeared above them. You have nowhere to go, he said. Then the floor indicator lit up. Something was coming up the elevator shaft from below. The elevator indicator climbed from the sub-level 1 floor at a time. Jack shifted the young Carvax against his chest, while its mother positioned herself between the group and the closed doors. How many officers fit in that car, he asked. Valor checked the freight specifications on the dark wall panel. 12, if they are wearing field armor. Cashin gave a dry laugh. Of course they are wearing field armor. Lyra searched the corridor and found a manual service box beside the elevator. The emergency brake still has mechanical controls. Jack handed the young animal to Valor. The professor stiffened as the small creature curled against his robes. Support the back legs, Jack said, and do not squeeze. Valor adjusted his grip carefully. The mother watched every movement. Jack opened the service box and found 2 metal levers, both labeled in Academy trade symbols. Which one stops the car? The red lever, Valor replied. Cashin leaned closer. They are both red. The indicator reached 3 floors below them. Jack studied the cables instead. One was tight with moving tension. The other remained loose. He wrapped both hands around the tight line and pulled the release beside it. The elevator stopped. A heavy thud came from inside the shaft, followed by voices over a security channel. Lyra smiled for the first time since the alarms began. You trapped them between floors. For about 30 seconds, Jack said. Oryx will reroute power. Cashin pointed toward a side passage. The east stairwell leads to the public lecture wing. Vaylor shook his head. That wing will be full of students. Exactly, Cashin said. Oryx cannot erase witnesses if half the academy sees us. Jack looked at the screens. Oryx's face had disappeared, but the cameras were still following them. He does not need to erase everyone. He only needs them to believe his version first. As if answering him, the academy speakers came alive. Emergency notice, Oryx announced. A human exchange student has released a dangerous research animal and taken members of the faculty hostage. All students must remain inside secured rooms. Cashin stared upward. He made you the threat. He planned that before the test started, Jack said. The elevator cables jerked. Power was returning. Lyra opened the stairwell, but a security barrier dropped across it before they could pass. Oryx appeared on the nearest screen again. Last opportunity, Mercer. Put down the juvenile and step away from the adult. Jack faced the camera. You keep asking me to put down the only proof you have left. Oryx's expression did not change. The animal will not protect you forever. She is not protecting me. Jack glanced at the mother Carvax. She is protecting her child. Cashin searched the wall for another exit. There is a student access bridge above us, but the ladder is retracted. Lyra looked up. The bridge hung nearly 15 feet overhead. Jack spotted a cargo lift platform beneath it. Cashin, help me release the brake. They pushed the platform into position while Vaylor held the young Carvax and Lyra worked the controls. The elevator doors behind them began to separate. A narrow line of light appeared between the panels. Jack climbed onto the platform. Send me up. The controls are damaged, Lyra said. It may not stop. Then I will stop it. The platform rose fast. Jack caught the edge of the upper bridge and pulled himself over as the lift continued into the ceiling. Below, the elevator doors opened wider. Security officers appeared behind them. Jack found the bridge release and struck the manual switch. A ladder dropped toward the others. Cashin sent Lyra up first, then Vaylor with the young animal. The mother Carvax refused to climb. She cannot use the ladder, Vaylor said. Oryx's officers stepped into the corridor. Cashin stood between them and the animal. Jack looked across the bridge and saw a cargo door leading to the academy courtyard. Then he noticed the bridge load controls. Move away from the center, he called. Cashin understood. He jumped onto the ladder as Jack released one side of the bridge. The platform tilted downward, forming a steel ramp from the corridor to the upper level. The Carvax charged up it with effortless speed. The officers stopped below, suddenly unwilling to follow. Jack sealed the upper door and turned toward the courtyard. Hundreds of students stood outside, watching. Lyra checked her data pad. Oryx locked the network. I cannot upload the files. Cashin looked toward the central lecture hall. The main broadcast system has an independent transmitter. Vaylor's face tightened. Only the dean has access. Jack looked through the glass doors. Dean Oryx was already standing inside the lecture hall, addressing the academy. Beside him sat 3 military representatives. On the screen behind them was Jack's face beneath one word. Terrorist. Jack stared at his own face on the screen while Dean Oryx told the academy that a frightened human had lost control. The lie was clean, confident, and already working. Students in the courtyard backed away from the glass doors. Security teams moved into position around the lecture hall. Lyra looked at Jack. Once they accept that story, nothing we show them will matter. Cashin pointed toward a maintenance entrance beneath the broadcast tower. There is a service route behind the stage. Vaylor adjusted his hold on the young Carvax. Oryx will have guards there. Jack watched the mother standing beside him. She was tense, but no longer panicked. Then we do not go in through the stage. He looked up at the transparent roof of the lecture hall. We go where everyone can see us. The courtyard access lift was meant for equipment, not people. Lyra bypassed the safety lock while Cashin rolled a transport platform beneath the outer wall. Jack stepped onto it with Vaylor and the young Carvax. The mother climbed beside them, filling most of the platform. This is a terrible idea, Cashin said. Jack looked down at him. You can stay here. Cashin climbed on. I did not say I was staying. The lift carried them toward the roof as Oryx continued speaking below. The human displayed unstable predatory behavior, he announced. He manipulated Professor Thane and released the Carvax to create panic. Vaylor's jaw tightened. He makes arrogance sound official. That is because people trust a title before they trust evidence, Jack said. They reached the roof access. Lyra opened the service hatch, and the group entered the upper lighting grid above the auditorium. Hundreds of students sat below, listening in silence. Military delegates watched from the front row. Oryx stood beneath Jack's image, holding complete control of the room. Cashin found the broadcast junction. The main feed is encrypted. Lyra connected her data pad. I can break it, but I need time. A security alert flashed across the junction. Oryx had detected them. Doors opened at both ends of the lighting grid. Officers entered. Jack looked down at the stage, nearly 40 feet below. How long? 30 seconds. You have 15. Vaylor stepped forward before Jack could stop him. Dean Oryx, he called. His voice carried through the hall. Every head turned upward. Oryx looked toward the grid. Professor, step away from the human. No. Vaylor's answer came without hesitation. I approved the transport documents. I ignored inconsistencies because I wanted the discovery attached to my name. That failure is mine. But the illegal conditioning program is yours. A wave of whispers moved through the audience. Oryx smiled. A confused confession from a hostage. Cashin moved beside Vaylor. Then call me confused too. He raised his student identification toward the cameras. I increased the restraint signal during the examination. Dean Oryx had already altered the field. The access log proves it. Oryx's expression finally changed. Cashin, your father will hear about this. Good, Cashin said. He should hear it from me. The officers advanced along the grid. Lyra kept working. 10 seconds. Jack handed the young Carvax to Vaylor and stepped between the officers and the others. He did not raise his fists. He simply stood there. You know what he will do once you take us? Jack said. The lead officer hesitated. We have orders. You had orders to protect students too. Below, the mother Carvax released a low call. The young one answered from Vaylor's arms. The sound filled the hall. Students began rising from their seats. Oryx turned toward the control booth. Cut the microphones. Lyra smiled. Too late. Every screen changed. Jack's face disappeared. In its place came the hidden chamber, the juvenile restraints, the altered field log, and Oryx's private authorization codes. Then the audio played. Oryx's own voice filled the auditorium. The human was never supposed to get close to the wall. No one moved. The silence was absolute. Oryx looked at the military delegates. They were no longer watching Jack. They were watching him. Security officers lowered their weapons. For 1 second, Jack thought it was over. Then Oryx pulled a small control device from inside his coat. You still believe evidence gives you power, he said. Warning lights flashed across the academy map. Vaylor stared at the display. He armed the research reactor. Oryx backed toward the private exit. In 4 minutes, there will be no laboratory, no animals, and no academy left to investigate. Jack looked at the packed hall below, then at the Carvax mother. Her eyes were fixed on him. Lyra, keep the feed live, he said. Cashin, evacuate the students. What are you doing? Jack turned toward the reactor access corridor as the countdown began. Finishing the test. 4 minutes was not enough time to save an academy, but it was enough time to choose what kind of person you were going to be. Jack ran toward the reactor corridor while alarms rolled through the building. Behind him, Cashin directed students toward the courtyard exits, his voice steady for the first time all day. Lyra kept the broadcast live, sending every file beyond Oryx's control. Vaylor carried the young Carvax toward the evacuation route, and the mother followed until she realized Jack was moving the other way. She stopped. Then she turned and went after him. You should be with your child, Jack said without slowing down. The Carvax stayed beside him. The reactor access door was sealed by a manual blast lock. Oryx stood on the other side of the glass, one hand on the escape control, watching the countdown fall below 3 minutes. You cannot stop it, he said through the intercom. The shutdown requires 2 authorized operators. Jack checked the panel. Then why are you still here? Oryx glanced toward the private shuttle bay. That was answer enough. He needed the reactor stable long enough to launch, and the final lock would not release while the emergency system was active. Jack looked at the Carvax. He trapped himself. The animal pressed one armored shoulder against the door. Jack found the mechanical release beneath the panel and pulled it while she pushed. The lock opened with a deep metallic groan. Oryx backed away. Control that creature. Jack stepped inside. I never controlled her. The Carvax moved between Oryx and the shuttle entrance, not attacking, simply blocking the only way out. For the first time, the Dean had no title, no guards, and no system to hide behind. He was just a frightened man facing the consequences of his own choices. "There are thousands of lives in this building," Jack said. "Help me shut it down." Oryx stared at the countdown. "You would trust me?" "No. I trust that you want to live." That honesty reached him where mercy had not. Oryx crossed to the second console and entered his authorization. Jack followed Vaylor's instructions through the emergency channel, opening coolant lines and resetting the magnetic locks by hand. The timer reached 14 seconds, then 7, then 3. The reactor warning changed from red to amber. The countdown stopped. Across the academy, the alarms fell silent one by one. Oryx sagged against the console. Security arrived moments later, this time with orders from the military delegates who had watched everything. They placed him under arrest without ceremony. Jack did not celebrate. He walked back through the corridor, found Vaylor near the courtyard, and returned the young Carvax to its mother. The reunion was quiet. No grand display. The small creature pressed close beneath her chest, and the mother lowered her head toward Jack. Cassian stood nearby, exhausted and ashamed. "I am sorry," he said. "I thought being fearless made me better than you." Jack looked toward the students gathering under the morning sky. Nobody was fearless today. Weeks later, the Carvax and her young were returned to Vorga. Vaylor resigned and testified against Oryx. Lyra helped create the Academy's first ethics board with real authority. Cassian stayed, not because anyone forgave him quickly, but because he finally understood that regret only mattered when it changed what you did next. At the final hearing, Vaylor asked Jack why he had stepped forward when everyone else stayed silent. Jack thought about the animal, about his brother, and about all the years he had mistaken an old failure for a permanent truth. "Because courage is not what you feel before the moment comes," he said. "It is what you choose after fear tells you to leave." No one applauded. The room was too quiet for that. Some lessons do not make people cheer. They make people look at their own lives and wonder how many times they had called something dangerous simply because they never tried to understand its pain, and how many times they had waited for someone else to step forward.